I want to start with what I asked Dr. Virmani, because at the very outset, Dr. Virmani, these numbers that have come out on the economic survey, 6.5%, do you believe that it gives us room for comfort? Is the worst over in a way for the Indian economy, and therefore going ahead, do you see positive signs here, or are there global headwinds that we should be worried about, Dr. Virmani?
So there are two questions there. So first thing is the recovery complete? And as those of us who have been following this over the last 3 years have been saying, that we had the first wave and the second wave, and the first wave had a stronger negative effect, and we had recovered from it by the time the second came, and it had a negative effect, but it proved to be slightly less than the first wave. Now, I had personally predicted a recovery in FY22, and of course everybody knows now that we got hit by the Ukraine war. So that clearly raised the uncertainty level across the world, not just in India, and there were fears of a very bad negative effect of that. But from the data which is now available on India, we know that the effect was not that bad, or we managed it reasonably well, partly because we didn't have to face the full negative effect of the oil price rise. So our basket in a sense has risen less, but both the growth and the employment effects have been lower than we anticipated. So in conclusion, yes, we have now normalized both from the pandemic and the effects of the war in FY22. So that is the first part of your question.
Pranjul Bhandari, how do you see these numbers that the economic survey throws up? Do you also agree that in a sense India has fully recovered from the pandemic, or is it, as some are suggesting, still a huge gap between expectation and performance? Budget estimates 22-23, GDP growth rate was supposed to be 9.2% in real terms. Economic survey now pegs it for financial year 23 at 7% in real terms.
Thank you, Rajdeep. So look, India's GDP growth is actually, the levels is back to pre-pandemic levels. So from that sense, yes, the recovery has happened. But you can look at it in a more nuanced way. Had a pandemic not happened, India today would have been much stronger and much larger economy than it is right now. It is currently about 8% lower than where it could have been had there been no pandemic. So from that perspective, I think the growth challenge remains, and India continues to have a challenge of working on increasing growth over the medium term. Now, how do you increase growth over the medium term? I think the best thing you can do right now to increase growth is to actually not obsess about growth. I think 2023 is a very challenging year. The global economy is extremely volatile. I think it's a time to not obsess about growth, but to actually make sure that there is macro stability in our country. Prices are low, there's a lid on inflation, the trade deficit is low, the rupee is stable, and the fiscal deficit is falling, which basically means that the government is not pushing out the private sector by borrowing too much in the market. I think if we focus on these indicators of macro stability, we will set a very good stage that when the global cycle turns and global growth begins to recover, India will actually experience a takeoff. And so from that perspective, I think the best thing we can do to secure medium-term high growth is to not obsess about growth in 2023.